everybody. Going to welcome you into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We got a lot to discuss tonight. Kentucky preview. Roy Williams got a contract extension. Then we got a fun topic at the end of the night's show. Going to welcome in my co-host. Y'all know it's as always, it's Anthony. Man, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Feeling a little bit better than last week. Ready to go. Ready to talk about yet another important game for the Tar Heels. It seems like just about every week now we have an important one, but this is a big one out in Las Vegas to finish Chicago. Out in Chicago to finish this stretch up, and then after that we'll have a little bit of I guess you would say a cool down before we go into conference play. So it'll be definitely interesting tomorrow, and I think we're going to be pretty psyched up for this game. I think Kentucky is one of those teams that's kind of a lesser talked about rival of the Tar Heels. You know, of course, Duke, NC State get talked about a lot. I think Kentucky's probably somewhere right behind that in the matchup of blue bloods, two sides that, if you see the two fan bases, there is a lot of animosity towards one another. And you better imagine that Kentucky still remembers the last time that we played them. So, it's going to be definitely an interesting game, and I'm ready to break this thing down, man.
Yeah, and we'll get to that here in a minute. We're going to start off with some news we got on Wednesday, that the university gave Roy Williams an 8-year extension, meaning his contract now runs through the 2028 season. So he's under contract for another 10 years at the minimum. You know, Roy is 68 years old. You know, Dean Smith, quit at 66, so he's already outlast Dean Smith. And when the news broke, not from our fan base, but, from some local guys here at 610 The Fan and from some national guys, they were puzzled because they're like, why the hell are you giving a 68-year-old man a 8-year extension? You think this guy's going to coach until he's, 90? And so I guess I wanted to ask you, what did you think about it? Because I thought it was a good thing, and I'll get to my reasons why. When I know you're a Roy guy. Did you think it was smart that he got that long of an extension?
Well, I mean, I think people kind of understand what our response is going to be to this, considering the name of the podcast is Roy's Boys Podcast.
Yeah, right.
It's a little hard to criticize him. But, when I saw it, I was just I didn't really think much of it, because I think it's kind of like one of those things, that you see with these types of coaches that, coaches of this mantra. They want to keep them around. They're going to give them these lengthy contract extensions. And, do I think that Roy Williams necessarily finishes out this contract? I'm not sure. If I had to bet right now, would he finish out the contract? I'd probably lean yes. But would it shock me if he didn't end up finishing out the contract? No. And some of the people, one of the guys that I was listening to, because, me and you both actually called in to the afternoon show to talk about it here in Charlotte. And, this one guy brought up, well, my dad is 68 years old, and Roy Williams, he's in good health. Roy Williams doesn't have any health issues. Sir, have you been MIA for the last couple of years? We've known that Roy has definitely dealt with some health issues related to the vertigo in particular. So I wonder, as that goes along, how will that start to potentially affect him? So if he was to step away, if he was to reach a point in the next few years where he says, look, I've had more vertigo spells, I need to step away from the game, I don't think anybody would say, okay, we should be angry about this. Why would he not finish out the length of this contract? But at the same time, I mean, look, you're locking up a Hall of Fame coach and a guy that the other night was was discussed by Dick Vitale, who is on his Mount Rushmore of coaches to ever coach in college basketball. That's humongous, considering the guys that he is placed in that, on that staff, in that group with. And to have him as one of the 4 best coaches of all time, I think that just continues to show how valued Roy Williams is, not only by us, but just by college basketball people around the nation. So, me, I didn't really have a problem with it, and I'll let you get your initial thoughts in, and then I'll tell you one of the reasons why I think that the terms of the contract were so long, why the years on it were so long.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it like, clearly this man's, he's never going to be fired by the university. So, like, he basically has a quote-unquote lifetime contract.
Mm-hmm.
But in today's day and age, you got to release all the, the links and all this other stuff. I looked at it from a thing as we're not in what Syracuse is going through right now, where Jim Boeheim was supposed to retire within a time frame that he just decided, I'm not going to retire, and the program has suffered from it. So we at least know for the foreseeable future that Roy's going to be on the sidelines coaching, so you can't have that against you in recruiting as a negative aspect. That was one thing I took away from it. I'm with you. I think this man will coach out the terms because this guy's a man of his word. I mean, he in 2000 he was asked to come back home, and he'd made a promise to Nick Collison that, look, I'm going to be at Kansas till you're gone. So he couldn't come back home because he made a promise to a kid. As long as his health is there,
right?
People think this man doesn't want to coach, but I just think he's different on the sidelines compared to when he was 20 years ago, because he's just that much more experienced and matured, where he's not going to freak out. Now, I'd like it personally when he loses his mind, but
he still freaks out.
Yeah,
pretty much throughout the entire game. I don't know what more people really want.
The fire's still in the belly, so I just think this is a guy with a man of his word. Wouldn't have signed the contract of that long if he didn't think he could coach that long. So as long as his health keeps up and he doesn't have some drastic, family event, I think this man will continue coaching. And lastly, and this is maybe not something to talk about now, but I think it gives him more time to decide who takes over him once he retires, because
you took my point right out from under me.
This is something that we've been talking about the last couple of years, because with his health, sorry guys, I'm a little sick. With the vertigo, and then his knees were bad.
Right.
We just didn't know how long he could go, and now we've got a 10-year window where this could allow Hubert Davis to leave to get head coaching experience, C.B. McGrath to get more experience and maybe come back. Maybe a guy like Sean May, who's working his way up the ranks on the staff, or even Kendall Marshall, for all we know, 10 years can maybe be in position, because there's just so many guys, and that's what I think. Now we have a little bit more time for Roy to decide, okay, when I'm done, who am I going to give the program to?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I said. That was the point that I called in and made to Garcia and Bailey here in Charlotte. I think it's got to be a valid point at this rate, because it seems like Roy Williams is going to have the Dean Smith type treatment. It shouldn't shock anybody. That's how it's going to work at Carolina. It's a family aspect, so more than likely they're going to keep it in the family. And personally, I don't have a problem with it. If they were to go with an outside hire, I wouldn't mind that either, because Roy is going to pick who he thinks fits this program best. One of the other guys that I thought, to keep an eye on definitely is Wes Miller. And I think that also could give him time maybe to go from a mid-major program right now in UNC Greensboro, maybe get a job with a major program, have a little bit of success, and potentially evolve into the next head coach. Also, keep an eye on Gerard Haas. Remember, Gerard Haas has been away for a little while now and has been able to build himself up a little bit as a head coach. Now, he isn't having the greatest success yet at Stanford, but I think with time, he could evolve into a very good coach out there at Stanford. Which, again, that's a tough school to coach at, considering that Stanford is and always will be a football school. There are definitely some interesting candidates. Luckily, it does not seem like we are going to have to talk about that for a long time. But, I agree with you 100%. I think that this move pretty much solidifies in my mind that he will be the guy that will pick the next head coach, and that this contract basically is saying, look, take as long as you need whenever you feel like you need to duck out and give the program off. You'll know that you'll be under contract until then.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to move on now from that, and we're going to get into this Kentucky preview. This is one of the sport's better rivalries. There is animosity with the fans.
Oh, yeah.
We don't get along with them on Twitter. There was animosity between Adolph Rupp and Dean Smith when the rivalry got underway because Adolph Rupp did refuse to come to Chapel Hill because Dean Smith had integrated the town. So we'd always play them either in Rupp or on a neutral floor.
Boy, teams that don't like to go on the road and will only play in neutral sites or at home. Who does that remind people of?
Right.
Can't put a finger on it.
So, this is a game that I'm jacked up for.
Mm-hmm.
I love when these two teams get together now. I'm the nerd that wishes this was played in either Lexington or Chapel Hill, but Chicago's not bad. I'll take it. And I think this game is going to be really exciting. I mean, Carolina's coming off a big-time win over Gonzaga, where they showed you, even when they turned the ball over 23 times, they could be as good as anybody on offense in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky, the last time they played, blew out Utah in a game that really they played probably their best game to date. This Kentucky team, as always, under John Calipari, they're young, but they're as gifted as anybody. They want to get out and run, kind of like we do. So, the last time we played in the regular season, the game got into the 100s. I'm not saying we could get that high, but the 80s, very, very potential, maybe even the 90s, because both teams are going to push the ball.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at this Kentucky team, Keldon Johnson's leading them in scoring at 16 a game.
Right.
He had 24 the last time against Utah. You go inside. I've always thought the last 2 years when P.J. Washington decides he's going to play to his capabilities, Kentucky's at their best. He's giving you 8 rebounds, so Luke May's got another matchup inside.
He's a former 5-star, right?
Yeah.
So, when he's playing at his best, you're going to expect a good performance from him just about every time out. Yeah, you're right.
And this gives Luke May another matchup inside. Last week, it was Rui Hachimura, and Luke May dominated him with a 20-16 effort. And then look at the point guard. Ashton Hagans was a guy that Carolina recruited, and now ultimately went to Kentucky. Young guy. He hasn't been too well efficiently shooting the ball. He is a Kobe White kind of guy because his assist numbers are only like 3 a game, so he's more of a score first guard. I think there's just so many matchups on the floor that we got to keep an eye on tomorrow.
Hagans to me doesn't really scare me as much because he's shooting just 38% and just 14% from 3. Now, he's only shot the ball 34 times the entire season. So, I don't really know what to make of his numbers. But at the same time, you're right. P.J. Washington to me is the guy that, if I had to look at it and they say, okay, who do you think is the guy that will probably do the most damage against you? I would say him because it's like you said, when he's on, he's really tough to stop. And he's shown at times that he can play up to what he was ranked coming out of high school as a 5-star prospect. But then there are other times where he will simply be shut down. So it'll be interesting to see what Luke May can do against him. Again, we've had another week layoff here. So another week of practice to try to get this defensive scheme in place, continue to iron out some of the flaws that we've had. And I think that might end up helping Luke May tomorrow. You look, Keldon Johnson, like you mentioned, a guy that, can really shoot the ball well. Second most shooting attempts on the team with 97. So, look, the fact that the guy is shooting 43% from 3 as well is pretty good. So, he's definitely a dangerous guy to keep an eye on. And then the other guy that's probably not talked about that much, the guy that actually has shot the ball the most this season is Tyler Harrow, averaging 12.1 a game. I don't think he's going to be a flashy guy, only shooting 28% from three. But, I mean, this is a guy that clearly he's shooting the ball a lot, so if he gets hot, you never really know. And we've seen this before with some of these teams that come in here that we are maybe not expecting to be as good because, look, let's be real honest. This Kentucky team is not as good as we thought they were coming into the season. We thought, okay, this team has a lot of guys returning. That's weird.
Right.
They have so many veterans. I mean, they have veterans on the team now. They got to be good, right? This has to mean that they're going to be a better basketball team. That has not been the case. Although I still feel like they're a top 15 team in the country. And I think, that game against Utah may have helped them to gain a little bit of confidence. I get that Utah is nowhere near as good as they've been in the past. That's not a tournament team by any stretch of the imagination. But still, that was a nice win. The only other one I guess that you could say would be dangerous is Reed Travis. I mean, he's averaging 14.6 a game, but I mean, in the preseason, all we heard, there were people in the preseason that thought this kid was better than Zion. Apparently, he was the second coming of LeBron James. With as much as I saw them talking about him on SportsCenter and how much of a difference maker this guy would be at Kentucky. One of the things about him, he's shooting 50% from three, and I remember at Stanford, he shot the three a pretty decent amount. He's only shot the three 8 times this year. So they're trying to make him into this post player inside. And so far, I don't think it's really worked. I mean, if they want to do that again tomorrow against Garrison Brooks, I think we'll take it. That's where Garrison does most of his work well, is down low. So, yeah, feel free to put him down there in the paint and just let Garrison play his game.
Yeah, I wrote about it, in the preview. I think the inside presence by our bigs, neutralizing their bigs, might be the difference because but you got young point guards, and the outside shooting for both teams can be streaky. Mm-hmm. If Garrison can give you 9 and 9 like he did against Gonzaga, I think in a game like this you'll take that. Reed Travis is a very capable player. I think they're not using him the way that his skill set should be used. But look, I'm not John Calipari. I haven't been to the Final Fours and won a national championship. But this game just has the feeling that Calipari gets his teams up for these kind of events.
Right.
No one's talking about Kentucky after they got embarrassed in the opener against Duke. They lost on a neutral floor in New York to Seton Hall, which isn't a bad loss, but Kentucky shouldn't be losing to Seton Hall.
Exactly.
Home, away, or neutral court. But I think this Kentucky team, this is what they are now under Calipari. They're going to start slow. They're going to lose a couple games before they get into conference play. And then they're going to feast on a conference that most years isn't very talented or very deep. Now, this year, the SEC is a little bit better. And then by the time come March, when we're filling out our brackets, we're like, God, do we really want to play Kentucky? I think that's what they are. They're kind of what we are. We're going to lose some games, and then we're going to round into form. And come March, people are going to be like, this team can make the Final Four because of the talent and the coaching. So,
Oh, yeah, you're right. They're always one of those teams that I think is better later in the year than they are early in the year. And, of course, in the past, the SEC schedule has eased them into it a little bit. I feel like this year, like you said, is going to be a little bit different. I feel like that this is probably the best the SEC has been in a while. So it'll be interesting. The one thing also that I look at in this game is Quade Green not being there anymore. This is the first big game that they played without him. Now, they played the game against Utah without him. But now, this is the first time that you're playing an opponent that is on the same talent level as you, and you lose a guy out of your rotation that was averaging 17 minutes a game on the floor and averaging 8 points a game. That's not going to be the easiest thing to just snap your finger and immediately replace. So that could be an area where if you can start to get into this bench, you could do some damage against these guys. And that's one of the keys for Carolina because, as we've seen with our bench, these guys have started to get going. Seventh Woods is a guy that is really starting to get some buzz, not just in the Tar Heel community, but now some of these guys finally saying, hey, look, this guy is stepping up to be what we thought he could be when Roy Williams recruited him to Carolina. A lot of the national guys liking what they're seeing from Seventh Woods out of that backup point guard spot, and they think that could be one of the reasons that Carolina can make a run in March and in the ACC in general, or a little bit earlier in the season, is because of just how talented that bench can be. And of course, I mean, we know Nazir Little. We had one of the guys earlier today on the timeline I saw. This is Nazir Little's breakout game. To be fair, I think this man has tweeted this at every single game so far, this fan, but you never really know. That's the thing. It seems like he's always on the precipice of a breakout.
Big words.
And it is. It's great. I'm going to Urban Meyer's teaching class.
Oh.
He said, there we go. So, but yeah, no, I think, when you look at the bench in general, if they can have another great performance, I'm looking at Kentucky's bench, and I'm not really seeing anyone that's jumping off the page to me as a guy that right now would really scare you off that bench. So if you can get some of those guys maybe in some foul trouble early on, particularly P.J. Washington, I think that's where you can have a little bit of success, especially if you can get the small lineup on the floor that everybody likes, that's had a good advantage this season. And same thing with Seven Woods. I mean, I mentioned the fact that, he's been shooting a lot better. I mean, the other night against Gonzaga, I remember seeing the stat tweeted out by Adrian Atkinson, who does a fantastic job with all the analytics stuff. Seventh Woods was a plus 18 while on the floor. So getting him on the floor is huge. And yeah, I think that's an area where we're going to have a huge advantage in this game.
Yeah, in games like this, depth.
Mm-hmm.
This game will be like a tournament type game with the neutral floor. There will be Tar Heel and Kentucky fans out there and the masses. And in games like this, depth always wins because both teams have had a week off.
Right.
They're gonna be rusty. Someone's gonna get in foul trouble just because of that's the game. And it's like you said, we get into their bench early. This Carolina team's still playing 9 or 10 deep right now.
Mm-hmm.
And none of these guys are killing you playing 9 or 10 deep. So, this could be a game for Nazir Little. And and I quoted the guy's tweet. And I was like, look, if he commits to getting the ball and going to the basket,
yeah,
then by all means he could finally show us what he's capable of.
Right.
He came in last week against Gonzaga, took 2 jump shots. Like, you don't come off the bench. You're not a known shooter. So get the ball, go to the rim, and then let everything fall into place.
Yeah, his shooting kind of comes to him as he goes throughout the game.
Yes.
Early on, his jump shot is never usually there. And I agree with you. I mean, this was a guy that in high school, when we watched the film of him, this was a guy that was aggressive, that was always going to the basket. He hasn't had that mentality yet at the college level. And I wonder, is he thinking that he's not going to be able to blow by some of these guys? I mean, look, you're a guy that is highly regarded as a top 5 talent at the NBA level. You just got to have a little bit of trust in your own game. And I think, that comes with time. And that's one of the main reasons why justifying taking Garrison Brooks out, because you just think that Nazir Little is better talent-wise,
right,
is a bit of an issue. But look, I'd like to see him be more aggressive driving the basketball. But look, if you're going to settle for these jump shots, make sure they're open jump shots. Don't be trying to force things up. You got to find, if you got to give that extra pass off to find an open look, give it up. That was when we were at our best the other night against Gonzaga. When you had them scrambling and you were making those extra passes to find the open shots, that's where we were having the most success.
Right.
And I'd like to see that happen once again against Kentucky, a team that is still, okay, we mentioned that they had veterans. A veteran for Kentucky is a sophomore, so they're still pretty young, still lacking a little bit on experience. that could get them flustered if you start hitting some of these open shots against them.
Right. All right, so we're gonna move to the part of the preview where we're gonna pick the winner
Gotcha.
and the guy. I'm gonna go first tonight. I think Carolina wins. I think Carolina's better. I think wins like Gonzaga, even with a week off, gives you that kind of confidence this team was needing because they haven't yet really beaten anyone of significance.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, UCLA lost home to Belmont the other night, so how good are the Bruins? We don't know right now.
Yeah, they're all over the place, man.
And there was a bunch of guys talking about after the game, like, yeah, we needed this game just for our mentality and all this other stuff. So I like Carolina to win a high-scoring affair. I think the player that, we'll be talking about, I'll be writing about, I think this is going to be a team that if they play well, it's because Cam Johnson shows up.
Mm-hmm.
He was spectacular against Gonzaga, scoring 25, hitting 6 of 8 from 3. And I think he's going to have a big game tomorrow. I think his shooting will be there. And he's starting to get a little bit more aggressive defensively and, more importantly, getting on the rebounding. That's something that I've always wanted more from him, is I think this guy should be averaging 7 or 8 boards a game with his length. And I think tomorrow he'll have a big game. So what's your prediction, and who's your guy that's going to stand out for you?
Yeah, I'm going to take Carolina. I think that win the other night against Gonzaga really gave us a little bit of positive momentum after what, at least in the fans' mind, was I guess you would call it a poor start. I'm not calling it a poor start, but in most fans' minds, it was not quite up to snuff for them. But that game, I think, showed, look, this is a talented team. When they're playing at their best, they are going to be extremely tough to beat. There's still some things to clean up on the defensive side. Don't get me wrong, and I'm with you. I think both teams will score at least 85 or more points. I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game as well, but I'll take Carolina. I'll say still pretty close. I don't think we beat them even by double digits, but I do think that it's a pretty good game. I think we will show some things defensively. I think it could be more than likely. This was what I would guess. Defensively, we'll play pretty well in one half and not so well in another half. That's what we've been doing the entire year defensively. Pick whichever half you believe that's going to be in. I'm kind of hoping it's the first half better than the second half. I'd rather have a strong finish to the game and than try to let them back into the game. But the guy, I guess, that I think we'll be talking about, man, I really like the matchup Kobe White's going to have against Ashton Hagen. I mean, Hagens. I look at him. I mean, yeah, Hagen's not. The numbers just aren't really all that great from him. I mean, this kid's talented, but I wonder, freshman against freshman, I think Kobe White has a little bit of an advantage over him, and I think Kobe knows that. He's going to be out to prove something, and I think this could turn into a huge point guard versus point guard battle if these two guys, maybe start getting into it, maybe start jawing a little bit because they do come from the same class. Both of them were highly ranked, and there's a lot expected out of them. But I think Kobe White, I think he has a great game. And, I wouldn't be shocked if he leads us in scoring, but I also think that your guy Cam Johnson is also a good pick to lead us in scoring at any time because we all know he can just, whenever he gets hot, there is no cooling that guy off.
Right. All right, so now we're going to transition into tonight's, discussion topic. We are 4 days away from Christmas. Santa's getting his sleigh, the reindeer, and getting all his toys packed and ready to go around and visit all the children that were on the nice list. And so my question to you is if you had to wish one wish for Tar Heel Santa to grant for this basketball team right now that could be, short-term, long-term in terms of this team's success, what would that one thing be?
Well, I mean, of course, everybody's going to say, you need to wish for a national championship. Well, we're all going to wish for that.
I'm talking like
you got to be a little more specific.
A part of the game, like
exactly.
Is it turnovers, better offensive rebounding? Is it better defense? Like if there's one thing that you just think you could wish for the long term for this team to get better at, what would that be?
I would say, well, there's two things, but I'll go with consistency on defense. That's my thing. We've had some good performances defensively, but we need to start showing that more consistently. It can't be a half-to-half thing. We've got to be able to lock these teams down. I thought in the first half, the other night against Gonzaga, we were fantastic. Guys were active. Guys were moving. And I thought everybody did a great job of knowing where they had to be on the floor whenever they were double teaming. I thought it was they really did a great job early. In the second half, I thought they were caught a couple of times, sleeping. I do think there were a few times where, look, Gonzaga just made some shots. I don't think they played awful in the second half against Gonzaga. But at the same time, I would like to see a little more consistency from this team defensively. I'd like to see those numbers of points per game get down into the mid-70s or low 70s that you're allowing. That would be, I guess, my wish to Santa. That would be at the top of my list. I mean, what would be at the top of your list at this point in the season?
Mine is what I think, short-term, long-term, where we want to get to is continued growth from the big men.
Mm-hmm.
Garrison, we're seeing that progression game in, game out. He's even shown he has a 15-footer that if he can make that, 3 out of the 5 times you shoot it, all of a sudden they got to respect that. That's going to open up maybe a cut for Kobe White to the lane and for a lay-in.
Right.
Sterling Manley has had some moments where it looked like he's maybe starting to get it now that he's gotten in more of a rhythm off the bench, accepting his role. And I guess we'll categorize Nazir because he plays inside a lot. Him just getting more of it that, look, you're probably when you walk on the court, the most gifted athlete on the floor between the two teams, probably up until we play Duke. Duke might have 1 or 2 guys that maybe be physically more gifted than him.
We'll get to that later in the season.
So if these big guys can continue to develop and grow, that's a hallmark of this program winning in March, is having 2 guys that you can depend on in the post and even normally a third guy off the bench. So that's what I'm looking at. I think the guard play, I think Kobe White and Kenny have been just fine. Cam Johnson's going to give you points most nights.
Right.
If we can get consistency from Luke May and then growth from Garrison, Sterling, and Nazir, then I think, that national championship thing that we all want can become more realistic by the time it's time to start talking about that in February and March. So that'd be my thing for Santa, is for, I think Steve Robinson coaches the bigs. I know that's him and Sean May. For those guys to, be on those guys in practice and during games, and the bigs to continue to get better. So, is there anything else you want to add to that topic?
I think one of the other things that would probably be on our list, because let's be real honest here, if you have one thing on your Christmas list for Santa every year, that's a short list, man. I mean, I was the guy that had a full list. I mean, I was, there were more items on the list than players on the current Carolina roster. I mean, I was rolling out some big-time items. But I think one of the other things that we've got to put on there is cutting down on the turnovers. Because we've seen that come back to bite this team in the past. Any team, look, if you turn the ball over as much as Carolina did the other night, and that becomes a consistent thing, which I'm not saying that does become a consistent thing, it's hard to win a lot of games like that. Like, you can get 1 or 2, like we did the other night. But it showed the other night that, look, if you're going to turn the ball over, you have to literally shoot lights out, or else it's not going to work. So Yeah, we've got to cut down on it. And I think most of that is really just, frankly, communication.
Right.
You know, these guys being able to know where guys are going when they are throwing the ball too far out in front of them out of bounds. Or when, you know, you just got to recognize where players are at on the floor. If you see a defensive player there, you know, that's protecting against the bounce pass, don't try to give it to that guy. Hold on to the basketball. You know, I mean, those are some of the frustrations that we've had. Really just guys forcing passes, especially inside to the bigs. We saw that a couple of times the other night against Gonzaga. But the main thing against Gonzaga that was just so frustrating was there was a lot of turnovers up top. You know, I mean, that's one of the things that you just want to get those off the table. If you're going to turn it over inside, sometimes that's fine. You understand when a double team comes and maybe a guy gets tied up or something like that. In a case like that, where you're at the top of the key and you're literally just making a pass, you know, guard to guard, and it's getting taken away with ease. We saw it 2 or 3 straight possessions at one point.
Right.
That's where you want to try to sort of correct some of those flaws. And I think, you know, a week of practice will definitely help, and we'll have some more time to continue to work on that. But I think that would be something that should be on people's wish list as well. Maybe, you know, just to get some of these guys to be a little more efficient with the basketball as we go throughout the rest of the season, especially heading into March.
Yeah, you know, if I were to piggyback off of, you know, mine, I think mine would be, it kind of ties into the turnovers. It's just we have these mental lapses on offense and defense. Mm-hmm. And it's been something that we've kind of dealt with for the last couple years where we just go brain dead for 2 to 3 minutes. And sometimes those 2 to 3 minutes cost you what you did the other 37. So
that was literally the most Roy comment I think I've ever heard on this podcast, by the way. We go brain dead for about 2 to 3 minutes. I could see him saying that.
You know, last year at Syracuse, he called a timeout, and he's standing on the side, and he points like he's shooting himself in the head. Now there's a GIF of that. That's my favorite.
What a legendary one that one is.
And go-to GIF where I'm just like, you know, what the hell's going on? So, you know, that is something that, you know, hopefully over time we'll eliminate, because when you get into bigger games like tomorrow, when you get into conference play and all that stuff, you got to play a complete 40 minutes to win the game. So we're going to start winding this thing down. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to wish all you guys a Merry Christmas. You know, my best friend, Merry Christmas to you. You know, enjoy doing this podcast.
Yeah, same, buddy. 10 episodes in, and I think we're off to a pretty good start. And, yeah, of course, Merry Christmas to anybody that listens to this podcast. I mean, you guys have stuck with us here early on. We know, you know, whenever you start up a podcast, we have some bumps in the road. But so far, I think it's gone pretty well. And, you know, we've got an exciting basketball team to talk about. And, you know, I think that's something that people should definitely be happy about to celebrate with their family over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Carolina basketball is something to treasure. You know, I hope people understand it's a holiday, but, you know, watch tomorrow. You know, we'll be watching. I'll be tuned in. I want this one.
I think we're gonna do. Are we gonna do a halftime video tomorrow? Or that's gonna be one of the new things that we're gonna do on for the Roy's Boys podcast, and as well as the Heel Tough Blog podcast when football season rolls around as well.
Trying to interact with the fans a little bit more. Of course, you know, check out my blog. I put out a preview, a recap of every game. Mm-hmm. Try to write some other fun stuff to give you other than just, you know, previews and recaps. That'll be on Twitter and Facebook and all those sites. You know, and of course, subscribe to the podcast. You know, Spreaker's the easiest way to find us. Just search Roy's Boys if you don't know where to go. So I want to thank you all guys for listening. Merry Christmas, and go Tar Heels.